Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you. Thank you all for joining me on Blue Sky. We've got a lot of conversations to have there and on X. If you want to meet me on Blue Sky, you can go to santitajackson.bsky.social. Santitajackson.bsky.social. On X, I'm at Santita J. On Facebook, through Santita Jackson and Friends page. Please go there. I cannot take friends anyplace else, everybody. Please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Hey, Bernadette, tell Fair. Sending you so much love, my sister, and everybody out there on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please meet me there. Let's talk about the tariffs. And throughout the week, we're going to be talking about how tariffs are impacting all of us, how we live, and they're impacting us in ways that we cannot even imagine. Dr. Julianne Malveaux, the president emeritus of Bennett College for Women, MIT trained economist, brilliant, 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 and also the head of Push Excel, the Push for Excellence program of Operation Push. And we've been talking about the impact that tariffs are going to have on these colleges. We're already seeing the impact that America's, uh, well, we're not number one anymore.
Not at all.
And so you're seeing it at these colleges. These colleges have some of the so called top drawer colleges have tuitions that are mind boggling. Um, the super Ivies, if you will, like Stanford, like the University of Chicago, $100,000 a year. My father went to the University of Chicago. My brother did. We're all University of Chicago adjacent in the Jackson family, grew up on the campus and all of that, and went to their schools. $100,000 a year. And when you walk across the campus, you don't see a lot of people of color there, and certainly not a lot of Americans. Increasingly, you see students, the international delegation of students, because, as Dr. Malvo said, they can pay those tuitions, whether it's their parents or the state, the 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 countries that they're from pay these tuitions. They pay. Libya used to pay for you to go to school. Period. That's what they did. And so now I was listening to a conversation re-listening to a conversation that I had with Dr. Malvo about how these tariffs were impacting colleges and universities. And then I saw Ron Brownstein on CNN just a few hours ago. And he said, what people do not know, which is something that you said, Dr. Malvo, is that these colleges and universities are the economic drivers for much of America. Indeed, my mother said, when you're buying a home, always look for a college area.
Mhm.
Those areas are financially stable and they are affluent, but the people there are employed. At oftentimes, the police forces from these big universities also keep an eye out on the adjacent communities. Big, big, big. And so when you impose these tariffs and when you impose these restrictions on free speech, when you start kicking out these students, well, a lot of the impacts are just unfathomable. Hundreds of students have been kicked out already, and these are tuitions that have been paid. They don't do financial aid, but let me not speak too much more because Dr. Malvo, you have been very, very concerned about it. You've been sounding the alarm, and more academics are saying, wait a minute, when you start shutting down research in these
Yes.
universities, that is what puts them, that is what um, you have to understand in the global south and in these the so-called emerging nations, they're building universities
Yes. And we're closing.
and we're closing them, and they're pulling academics like you from the United States to help to build their universities. So when he says that the United States needs to look at these colleges and be very, very careful about what the president is doing, because these schools are the economic drivers for the country. Indeed, Ron Brownstein wrote that President Donald Trump's offensive against so called elite universities is also an assault on the nation's most economically dynamic metropolitan areas. From Boston and Austin to Seattle and Chicago, the Silicon Valley, and on and on and on. These are not just citadels of learning, but when you go to these areas, you see that they're affluent. You see that. You see that's where the money is. And so, Dr. Malveaux, when he says that these colleges and universities in the United States are driven, that the economic drivers oftentimes in these communities are colleges and universities, what does he mean?
Well,
Wait a minute, what do you mean? Because you've been saying this for a long time. Hey, Bernadette. Hey, Hannah down there in South Carolina. Andre in Chicago.
I'll give you the case that I know best, and then I'll talk a little more, but let's take a look at Bennett College for Women. Bennett had not had new construction for 28 years until I got there. I was able to work some economic magic between the federal government and some others, and a couple other things. And we were able to build basically a major construction effort. First new building, Global Learning Center, new dormitory, honors dormitory, a bunch of upgrades for various parts of the university, including a daycare center. We called it the Children's House. That brought millions into Greensboro, North Carolina. What did it do? Number one, we hired people. Number two, we hired construction companies and managers to get things done. Number three, we created business development opportunities for the community. Bennett is sitting right in the hood. And basically, we had people who had not worked who were able to walk to work because of the opportunities that we built. Number four, collaboration is a huge thing in higher education. And Bennett, along with the North Carolina A&T, I know your daddy is Aggie Pride, but with
As
AT,
is my mama and
that's right.
Jonathan and Jesse and Jackie.
All righty. Okay. Well, we were able to collaborate with them and other universities in the area to do all kinds of things. And so the collaboration creates what I call agglomeration economies. When a bunch of people are there, it creates other opportunities for people. So the research, university towns are dynamic, and they're partially dynamic because universities spend money. In addition, in terms of looking at Greensboro, but also looking at other places, students have to have some place to live. They're not going to live in a dorm for 4 years unless they have highly restricted parents and lots of dorm space. So many of them are actually also going to be looking at apartments. They're going to be looking at what they can do in communities. That's a small version. When I was at Bennett, we had an enrollment of just under 1,000. It's a bit smaller now, but we could see our impact. I was actually been cleaning my office because I've got papers going back to I don't know when. And I found a piece that I had commissioned from someone who said, what is the economic impact of Bennett College? And with our $22 million budget, our impact was about $40 million. So not quite twice, but almost twice of what we had. At a place like a Harvard or an MIT or the whole Boston, San Francisco State, there's a mall right next to San Francisco State. I believe that mall exists for the convenience of students. Mm-hmm. They've got great restaurants, and again, dynamic environment. Universities really do a number of things beyond higher education. And one of the things that they often do, this was not necessarily the case with Bennett, but it's often the case with other people, often they're anchor institutions for the economic development that's happening in that community, which is why people want universities to come to their areas, want people to be there. Remember, people drive the economy. The economy doesn't drive itself. So people drive the economy where there are people there's economic opportunity. But people have to want to come. What frightens me most about what's going on right now is, do people want to come anymore? Now, once upon a time, everybody wants to come to the United States to study. Everyone. We were the number one place to go. Now, China, India, Eastern Europe, and other places are creating more engineers.
Mhm.
Um, we're, they're opening colleges while we're closing them, and we become less desirable. On a world stage, we become less desirable. And then what this president has done is that he has also made us not only less desirable, but less reliable.
Mhm.
If you come to a college and your parents or your country is spending $100,000 a year, and you got your visa, you got your paperwork, you've been admitted, you're not expecting financial aid. Very few international students, very few, but some at graduate levels get financial aid. But here you come, and then suddenly there's a threat. We're pulling student visas. Okay, what does that mean to you? You're sitting in Bangladesh with your bags packed on your way to Harvard, and your bestie is deported for
Oof.
specious reasons. Are you going to come? No. And I think we're going to see right now we have 1.3 million international students in the United States. About half of them are graduate students, which means they've already got their undergrad degrees. They are contributing to the scientific body of knowledge because most of them are scientists. We do have a few in the humanities, but most are in science, engineering, and STEM areas. They're contributing to us. Many of them actually, many of the global countries complain about the brain drain because some people come here to the United States to study and they decide to stay because they prefer the standard of living here to their home, because they found it more compatible, perhaps because they found a partner here and they want to build their family and their future here. This all becomes far less desirable. So, whatever we used to be, in just less than 100 days, the current president has literally shattered our international reputation. And it's especially around higher education, where again, people are basically frightened. Really, the word is frightened, is fearful. And a lady who I don't know very well, but I ran into her today. She asked me, she said, her nephew has been admitted from someplace on the African continent. And she said, would you advise him to come? I said, I would advise him to be careful.
Oof.
And that's horrible advice to give to a young person. You don't want to trample on somebody's dreams. You don't want to say you have to be careful. But what we see now, you say the wrong thing and you're likely to be deported. They're pulling visas. This is really kind of scary. And then you touched on it earlier, but I want to go back to it because I don't think people understand how international students pay they pay their way. They more than pay their way. Um, and universities in HBCU land, which is where I used to live, we competed for those students. We want if you to get an African brother or sister who's coming from Mali, let's say, and their government has decided to subsidize their education because perhaps they're going to be in the foreign service later or something like that. That's gravy that's gravy for us. And then I remember Andy Young once talked
Mhm.
about his education, and he talked about the fact that he met people from all over the world, and that encouraged him to embark on the course that he embarked on. And later, when he became congressperson, um, head of the UN, all of that, he was able to draw on his Rolodex of people that he had studied with as an undergraduate at Lincoln University. I mean, isn't that amazing? And
It,
so,
I mean, it is. And Nkrumah did because he studied at Lincoln University. And
yes.
there's so much that we learn from each other in universities. You go in, you don't come out the same person that you were going in because you meet so many people from such a broad array of experiences who are in roughly in your age group. Um, and that does have cultural impact, Dr. Malvo. There's no doubt about it. But now academics are scared, right? Which
Yeah.
means what I mean, so you explain to me what that means, because if you feel that the university is going to be hostile to you, you're not coming.
Well, exactly. And so you're looking at new PhDs who are wondering where to go. They want to embark on their career in teaching or doing research. And those opportunities are shrinking because of the federal role with the Department of Education. So what you're seeing is people who a year ago, someone might say, "Oh, she's so promising. We really want to get her here to teach or to research or to interact with our students." Now she is wondering, really wondering, will she have the freedom to pursue her field? I mean, if she's a scientist, there may not be too many problems. Scientists tend to be very apolitical. But what if you're a
Mhm.
sociologist? Or I had a faculty member at Cal State LA, brilliant young brother, uh, who basically his focus was on Latino politics. But I couldn't give him the raise he wanted, so he decided to go to university, some college in Florida. I don't want to say which one, because anyway, he went to this Florida university, and before he got there, they gave him a list of things he couldn't talk about.
Oh, wow.
Diversity. Okay, he does Latino politics. So how are you going to do Latino politics and not talk about diversity? Um, they gave him a long list of stuff. What ended up happening to him, which was kind of a blessing and kind of not, is he ended up doing research for the year that he was there because he was afraid to teach. So he got time to work on his book because he didn't have to teach. He did have to go to work, etc. But he said he was afraid to teach, and they thought that he was a candidate to stay there. He was trying it out for a year, and if he liked it, he was going to change. He went right back to Cal State LA, which is what I told him to do. I mean, my advice to him was don't leave, take a leave of absence, and see if you can survive in that situation. And he sent me a note. He said, "Doc, that's the best advice you ever gave me." He said, I had a good year off, but and he gave a couple of campus talks, and he was highly scrutinized. And that's a lot of academics are afraid, but people are afraid. I got a call from a sister friend. We went to undergrad together. She's a Republican, but we've stayed friends over the years because I do have Republican friends, one or two. But she called me and she said, "Malvo, I need you to do me a favor." I said, "What's that?" She said, "Tone down." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, I said, "I'm a little fish. I ain't nobody. I don't have a syndicated show. I don't have this." She said, "People are still paying attention. Tone it down." She said, "My husband and I cannot get you out of jail." I'm like, "They ain't taking me to jail." She said, "You never know." I think she was a little overcautious, but I think that we all have to, and I ain't scared, you know.
Yeah, but can you be overcautious in this environment when an American citizen is stopped at the border?
Ooh, girl, exactly. And I was at the Blacksonian on Saturday, and was talking to folks. They had a member meeting that I went to. It was really great. But we're talking to folks, and I mentioned to them that I'm going to Grenada in May to
Mm.
celebrate Malcolm X's mother, and I'm really excited about that. And this one brother said, "Before you go, call your lawyer and make sure if they keep you, somebody can get you back." I said, "They're not going to keep me. I'm too much trouble." He said, "Honey, you don't understand. They're
Oof,
keep, they're keeping people." So
absolutely. No, they're
I have Reverend
disappearing.
Jackson's number on my phone, speed dial. If I call y'all, come get me.
Well, but but having said that, oh my heavens, please, you don't want any of that. So so leave Dr. Malfoy alone. You see, my question for you then becomes, um, I mean, before we go to solutions, it's like I don't know if we really understand um, the impact that a college or university has on a community. I mean, just that's what my mother said. When you want to buy a home, you go to a university community or university adjacent because those values are not going to go down no time soon.
No,
So I mean, given the fact that this is it really is at the heart and soul, not just of the American economy, but of who we are, what do you recommend that we do?
Well, the first thing is that we have to be vigilant. We have to be very, very vigilant because this is happening. Everything is happening at such warp speed that it's hard to keep up with everything. So be vigilant. If you're an alum of university, um, stay in touch with them. If contribute to your university. The biggest thing smaller colleges need, but also our larger colleges, is discretionary funds. So contribute to your university, but stay on top of what they're doing, and keep in touch. Most colleges have websites, and they help out. Just today, the president asked Harvard University to comply with a number of things, and they said no. So that right now, $9 billion of Harvard's money is being held up. So this is research projects, this is labs. This affects everything from studying medicine, developing new drugs, pharmaceuticals. But that money is going to be held up. Now, I know that Harvard has the resources to fight it, and I'm sure that they will. They also have the Rolodex in terms of alums for them to pick up the phone and call some of their notable Republican alums to say, y'all need to come in here and help us with this.
But that's what they've been doing for years. That's where the money would come from.
Exactly. That's why, on one hand, as a former HBCU president, I look at the amount of money Harvard gets, and I'm like, really? HBCUs could use a little slice of that, just a little slice of it. And some of the Ivies do partner with HBCUs and do have, I think years ago, and they still may, the University of Illinois had a program with a couple of HBCUs where they exchanged faculty and did other things like that. Because the other thing about universities is collaboration, is how people work together across fields, so all of those things are being imperiled. And the saddest thing is that the United States, which once led in this arena, is now falling way behind. Nobody, I mean, like I said, the BRICS countries, other countries, they're looking at the United States and we can do this ourselves. And the fact that this president will pick a fight with China. Now, China is far from perfect, and they do all kind of unsavory things about stealing our trademarks, often ripping off someone has a book that's copyrighted. Oh, they'll just print it up anyway and get it out there. So we know that they are not the best actor in the world. But 145% tariff, that just defies all imagination. And it's boiled down to, we started with these tariffs. It was going to be across the board. Well, they still have the across the board 10%. It's going to be across the board. And then other countries, they went country by country. Even a country that has nothing in it but penguins, they want to put some tariffs on them. But they went country by country and came up with these numbers based on faulty research. Then they said, okay, we're going to pause this for a minute, except for China. So China was the target all along, actually. But with all kinds of other things, the chip manufacturing, which President Biden passed the Inflation Reduction Act, passed away for us to begin to manufacture chips. But this current president, he just wants people to build factories without government assistance. They're not going to do that, especially in this uncertain time.
Oh.
Think of being a business owner today, Santita, and there was a sister just on CNN earlier, probably within the hour, and she imports a number of things from China. She had an order that she put in that she was expecting. The tariff was going to be $1,000. Now it's $6,000. So she said she's just on the fence of whether or not she can afford it or not. All of our Greek letter organizations, a lot of our paraphernalia is manufactured in China. Our Delta umbrellas, our bags, our swag bags, all in China.
Yeah. And I'm not hating on anyone, but it's heartbreaking to see what's happening with this reset. And when I walk across, it's not hard for me to walk across the University of Chicago campus. I live there. And to see that this world-class university has increasingly fewer numbers of Americans in it. To think that These universities that have been on the cutting edge of so much that have made our lives so much better, they're imperiled. I mean, that's putting it very mildly, Dr. Malvo. I mean, it's not $400 million that Columbia is afraid of losing. It's 5 billion when you add
Yes.
up all the numbers. I mean, and so my question is, I mean, what are they trying to do? I know they feel that um, that these places are woke and they're producing people who are woke, people who are progressive. I mean, but my question for you is, having said all of that, what can we do to save these universities? Because next year we'll be 250 years old as a nation. That is so small. I heard one of the ministers from China, one of the ministers from one of their departments. He said, "Look, America can play this game if they want to." I'm paraphrasing him. He said, "But we've been here 5,000 years. Let them come on." We forget they're 1.5 billion people. We're 340 million. They
Mhm.
are more than four times our pop. They have more than four times as many people as we do. More than that. I mean, they tell you they have 1.4 to 1.5 billion people. We don't know how many people there are because if they had so many people, it was illegal to have more than one. You remember that?
Oh
They just
yeah.
extended that. So when you've got all of that, the world is changing so much. Can America's universities afford to lose ground? You have mentored my baby sister, Jackie. Jackie is a PhD. She's got a lot of degrees, but she ended up with a PhD in global education policy. And she has really spent more time teaching out of the United States, now that I'm thinking about it, than she
Mhm.
has been teaching in the United States. She's over in Japan now. And so, my question for you is, how do we keep people like her? I mean, because these folks, they are pulling the best people, they're building their countries, their societies. And America, like you said, they're building universities in the BRICS nations, in China, in Japan, in India, in South and Central America. That's what they're looking to do. We're closing them here. They're looking for doctors. We don't even let you into the medical school. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I know that's got to be very frustrating for you as an educator.
It's extraordinarily frustrating. This whole environment is the things that keep me alive. I'll tell you, I went to the Blacksonian on Saturday. I was feeling a little bit down. There was an event. I said, well, I'm just going to get up and go. It was 8 in the morning. And we went, my godchild and I went. And it really put some wind under me, just because Joyce Ladner was on this panel and she
Mm.
talked about resistance. She talked that they've got a new program, a new oral history program at the Blacksonian, where they have students interviewing elders in their field.
Mm-hmm.
So the young lady from Howard University who interviewed Joyce, inordinately well spoken, very impressive, and just she was great. And of Joyce, of course, got up in the thing, stood up actually, off sat down, was stood and said, "Y'all don't understand how much trouble this museum is in."
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about, just like we're talking about, what does the resistance look like. Um, but that, I actually disobeyed my doctors and walked from the Blacksonian home. It was about a mile and a half without my cane because I forgot it. But I was so happy I almost skipped just because I got that food of being in the museum. The museum makes you feel good. You can't, if you feel bad in the museum, you just want to feel bad. Um, and then Sunday, of course, I had church, and I was my preacher, my minister, Reverend Bill Lamar, is amazing, and he talked about he ride on, you know, he used the theme "ride on" to talk about how we have to keep going, keep going, keep going, and that was food also. But absent that food, you could easily fall into a very depressive state because every day something is happening. Literally every day. I do fear for the Blacksonian. I fear for our colleges and universities. You know that your alma mater, Howard University, has a federal appropriation. They and Gallaudet are the only two universities that have a federal appropriation. What's going to happen to that?
Mm.
They haven't talked about it yet, but these people are sneaky and we don't know. Meanwhile, the District of Columbia, our tax dollars, our tax dollars are imperiled because the Congress has said they're going to cut across the board. And DC has to submit our budget to Congress before we can use it. The District of Columbia is an international gem. What's going to happen with us? Mayor Bowser is time enough for him. She sent them a letter and told them this is what you need to do. He keeps talking about the beautiful city. She said, so turn the fountains back on in some of the parks. So add patrols over these areas. She gave him a list. But the fact is that this is a fearful time, but we cannot be fearful. We can be apprehensive, but not fearful. We have, again, with our universities, surround your university. And you know, if you're a Black person with 50 extra cents, give it to the Blacksonian. I mean, you know, tithe first, but let's keep our museum going because they're coming after it. That executive order that he put out, restoring truth and something else, truth and sanity to America. And it directs J.D. Vance, to go through our museums and cultural institutions to remove anything that is, quote, racial, divisive. They don't want to talk about enslavement, but it happened. You could be silent, but it happened. We know it happened. So what we're seeing is literally an attempt at rewriting history, reconfiguring norms. Research collaboration is a norm in this country. Reverence for higher education is a norm in this country. But now you have people who have no reverence. Just the whole title of this thing, restoring truth. But where are the lies? You know, insanity. This approach is insanity. But this is what we're dealing with. And, you know, you almost feel impotent, except for the fact, like I said, I went to the museum kind of with my mouth poked out. Not with my mouth poked out. I wanted to be there, but I'm just like, I'm so sick of this man and this stuff. And I left out of there, ready to fight, live to fight another day.
But I think that's where we have to be. I mean, but I think we have to figure out. We have to look at what's happening. Just I think generally, because if if Colombia is frightened into submission, because a lot of kids they're saying they're not going to consider the United States, which to
Mm-hmm.
me is, I mean, let me ask you, what is the impact of some of the world's brightest scholars just ignoring the United States? What is the impact?
Well, it
How
hurt us.
what would that be like?
It hurt us. I mean, we'll have a lower knowledge base. We'll have fewer folks. Some people are saying they're not going to come to conferences here because, and usually that's where a lot of intellectual energy is spent at conferences. People giving papers, people reacting to each other's papers, people developing relationships around their shared areas of study. If people say they're not coming to the United States, and heck, if I was from a number of countries, I wouldn't come here. I mean, if you're stopping people at the border, if you picked up this man from Maryland who had a green card and sent him to El Salvador, and then boldly today say they're not going to bring him back, boldly sitting in the president's office, in the Oval Office, we're not going to bring him back. Um, that should have a chilling effect on anybody. And we've also always moved the world. We in the United States, we have been very privileged. Many of us who are of African descent forget that. We still live in the United States. We're very privileged, but our privileges are disappearing because we have been the aggressors towards so many countries, and they're sick of us. At the end of the day, they're sick of us.
And they're the ones with the natural resources. They're the ones with bricks. You're an economist. Bricks is real. I was talking to one of your colleagues and several years ago, certainly within the last five, he said, no one will, the decoupling of the dollar, that's the conversation from these nations. They are very serious about this, and they have gone down the street and said, I don't know what you're trying to sell to the United States. But we need to be very clear. The world is a different place.
Very much
I
so.
mean, it's so different now. You don't just look at the so-called Ivy League schools at the Ivies now. They've had to include Stanford. They've had to include the University of Chicago. But guess what? They're now including. They even have a category for the Ivies. They include that. They are now including the University of Wisconsin at Madison.
Oh yeah,
You know,
they're calling them the Dear Ivies, the College of William and Mary. But
yeah,
she just put something out on the internet that she said she used to be hate the snobs at the Ivies, but now she went to an Ivy because
yeah,
they categorize some of this stuff. No, the snobbery doesn't work. The American exceptionalism doesn't work. There are a number of things that we're addicted to, and they don't work. They simply don't work. And that's the story, and that's the work that we have is to look at how and see again, there are people who do not believe that fat meat is greasy. And so therefore, they didn't think this man was going to do all this stuff. And now they're sitting around stunned at where we are, stunned and say, oh my, even their faculty members who voted that way. And your vote is your choice. You have a right to vote however you want, but understand that actions have consequences.
hmm
And the higher education realm, we're going to see consequences that we are not really going to enjoy, and
but
we're
you know
already seeing it. I mean, what I'm looking at right now, Santita,
mhm.
is what will happen in August, September of this year.
What do you see happening in August, September of this year? Because
I
it's right. It's already
enrollments will
here.
be down. I think enrollments will be down. I think that enrollments will be down somewhat.
Wait,
And
wait,
you
wait a
know,
minute. When enrollments go down, well, in if enrollment goes down in a school, what happens? Because the school let us create, in these last 15 minutes or so, the ecosystem that is the university, right? Because I think of when I was at Howard in the 80s, up and down Georgia Avenue. And Howard's in the heart of the Black community in Northwest DC. There are four quadrants. The most affluent quadrant in DC is Northwest, but in the heart, there is the hood. And it was Georgia Avenue.
yep,
And you would go to Mr. D's. He was a neighborhood, he had a neighborhood, uh, what, diner. And you could get an account. You would establish it with your parents. So when you ran out of money, you went up there and got a meal, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Yes.
yeah,
Then you had, oh my goodness, the seafood restaurant. The name escapes me, Black owned, a little farther up the street. Um, you get your hair done. I mean, these are independent businesses, right? That depended upon Howard students.
yes.
Everybody went to Shelton on Columbia Road to get their hair done. Everybody but me, but it was because I didn't have, I just didn't wear my hair like that. But it was he made a mint, as did Liz Nolan and Natural Motion. I'm just saying, it just there are
Yeah,
so
no, but
many. I mean,
as we said, we start out by saying universities are an economic driver.
but no,
And so,
but paint the picture for people, because I don't even know it, particularly if you go to these schools like we did in these little communities. It's not just the big stores. It's little stores. People who make the sandwiches that you could afford. Come on,
exactly.
the food that you could afford when you ran out of money or
So
whatever.
when enrollment goes down, their business goes down. When enrollment
All the
personally,
businesses around just
yes,
in the immediate area.
yes. Enrollment, I mean, and for number one, enrollment drives the university's budget. Universities like Bennett and say Tougaloo, small universities, our budgets are 70% from tuition.
And now
70% for so if the enrollment goes down, the budget goes down, which means either somebody's going to get laid off, they might have a hiring freeze. Then, but enrollment goes down, all the stores, like you said, the ecosystem around the university that goes down. So you don't have as many little sisters going to get their nails done. Now, young ladies who, whether they have a quarter or not, are going to figure out how to get their nails done.
and
But
here.
uh,
And here.
But so the nail shop is going to hit it. Like you said, the small diner eateries are going to hit it. Um, and it reverberates. So we're sitting. I mean, actually, Jamie Dimon just recently said he thought that there was about a 40% chance of a recession. This morning, I interviewed a brother on economists from the Economic Policy Institute on my program on WPFW. Um,
Every
FM.
Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Absolutely. And he said he's more like 50%, 50-50. He studies tariffs. And he's actually written a great piece. If you go on to epi.org, Santita, he's written a great piece called Everything You Need to Know About Tariffs. Um,
Mhm.
and but he said this is just upsetting the apple cart in so many ways. Now, there are many who would say that the status quo was wrong and it needed to be changed, but not like this. This is disorderly chaos. You impose a tariff, you take it back, you impose um, whiplash. What people have around this is whiplash. People are like, how do we move on from here when we don't even know what's going to go on? And for universities, we have a bit more flexibility in planning, but not that much more. You need to know how many students you're going to have. I mean, Howard is among the many universities you've been there when occasionally they admitted too many students and they have to put students in apartments near the campus. But the flip side,
Occasionally. Huh.
yeah, not all the time.
No, look, and I say that with love because you know this is where you had the fun because you had your friends crashing on you all. A room that was for one had 4 or 5 people in it, and
Yeah.
I mean, of course, this is all before school started. And when you get to college, you are so happy to see your friends. You might as well stay with them because you're hanging out with them for a week or two before classes begin, as you spend the night in each other's rooms anyway. It doesn't even matter. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and those are the memories that we hold most dear. But if I'm seeing places like Howard, which has a huge community of students from the global South, I'm wondering what's going to happen.
I'm
Um,
concerned, I'm concerned
and
that
everywhere,
I'm
quite
concerned that
frankly.
ICE may start hanging out at some of our universities. I mean, they're already the hands-off
Mm,
march last week, um, Saturday the 5th. There were several friends from the global South who want to go and decided not to. They said a
yeah.
demonstration is the worst place for us to be. Um, what if they start hanging out on campus? They can. It's an open campus. Anybody can walk onto the campus.
We
Uh,
are turning broke stint because what they're doing now is turning people into informants.
yes.
So what they would do, I would think, is get people who are financially stressed
Mm-hmm.
and compromise them. I mean, because we're living. This is like I would call it a dystopian kind of world that we're
Very
in, and
much
this is
so.
this is very dangerous. And so I'm saying to you, love you, Lorraine, sending you so much love. Bernadette says this has got to change. Um, uh, okay, all right. Well, you know, when she applies for Howard, you got me correctional officer for the lockdown. You know that. Mr. Is I think you're an alpha, aren't you? Yep. Dave Dowling, sending you so much love. And you said wowzers, Dave Dowling. Yeah, this is what's happening in the United States. And I'm wondering, well, you know, if America's taking all kinds of hits, Dr. Malvo, but when you start moving into um, the places where we have been dominant, and I'm not saying that we have to be predominant, but we've had our place in the constellation. That's being unplugged.
Well, yeah, our star has dimmed. Our star has seriously dimmed. We're no longer the envy of the world. We really aren't. I mean, we were beginning to lose a little ground, but now people, revile us. Um,
They
and
really do. They really do.
and it's just a function of what's going on. We used to talk about bring us your poor, you're tired. Now the poor and the tired are the one we want to deport. Um, Even if they have green cards or even if they're citizens. And so we're sitting in a situation that is, again, it's apprehensive. But I think about Reverend Barber. I think about Reverend Jackson. Reverend Jackson lived through worse times than this. You
Hmm.
know, And he managed throughout it all. I always admired it. Once I said, Rev, how do you do it? Because he always stayed prayed up. He was always positive, no matter what was going on.
Yeah.
He was positive. And that's what we're going to have to be. But we have to be more than positive. Positive in a quarter will not get you a newspaper. We're
Well,
going to
but
have,
he was positive, but he was also a game changer.
oh, and he
And,
was strategic. But he
and,
was
and yeah,
strategic.
I mean, but he was serious about making advances, not for himself, but for everybody else. And I think the selflessness of our foreparents, we have
Yes.
to regain. Dr. King had the pedigree and the credentials, like Reverend Jackson. He didn't have the pedigree, but he had the credentials. He had the academic pedigree and the credentials, as did all of Dr. King's staff, to go and do many other things. They were primed to get the big churches. To My father turned down a spot at the Duke University Law School. Um, on and on and on. We can keep on going with this. These people, though, decided to not just make SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which was Dr. King's organization, the organization that my father came out of. Their motto is to save the soul of America, not black and white together, none of that. It was to save the soul of America because the society itself wasn't as sick. Dr. King said that America's arrogance would take us under. He said there will be some small country and you won't even know their name, and they will put America in their place. And do you know the number one car maker in the world is China? When I saw this minister, one of the ministers in China, say, "We've been here 5,000 years, please." Not only that, we don't need America because you're only about 4.5% of the world and you're only about 15% of the world economy. And we're getting the rest of the world economy on lock. Americans don't know that, Dr. Melvo. And they're
No.
building universities and airports, which are also economic drivers. In
Hmm.
China, every week, the airports and the air and the universities, they are just building them and they are world class, Dr. Melvo.
No, they've invested in education. We've been seeing this for the past 20 years while we've been divested from education. Part of our biggest challenge, our Achilles heel, is frankly our racism. As the as the population has diversified, you've seen a concomitant removal of dollars from higher education.
Mhm.
It's almost as if you say, well, if we have to educate all these black people, I'd rather not educate anybody. I mean, that no one has ever said that, but that's what the way you look at it when you see the dollars being put back. But that means the whole nation is hurting. The whole nation is hurting in terms of a future focus, in terms of the workforce,
Mhm.
failure to educate the workforce, and that's what they're doing. And but my warp theory is that they will be able to basically, if you have an uneducated workforce who is not critically thinking, you can basically do anything you want to those people. You can send them a signal, as we've seen. You have these people, they will argue you down to your blue in the face that the 2020 election was stolen. Now we know the numbers. We know, and that man today with the El Salvador president, he's in the Oval Office talking about the election was stolen. Well, first of all, get over it, dude. But secondly, more than that, he believes that he keeps repeating it. Well, he doesn't believe it. He knows better. But he keeps repeating it, and so do others. So you got this population that's um, all worked up about how he's been done wrong, and now they're going after people who legitimately doing their jobs, participated in investigating the president. Now he wants all of them out of their jobs, even though they're federal employees. He's going after law firms, and here's the problem, Santita. All these people are buckling. He said yesterday or the day before, people were lining up to kiss his hiney. Excuse me, China's not going to line up. China's not going to kiss anybody's
And
hiney.
that's why I don't even understand where that came from. But I'm telling you, as we shared yesterday when you were on Reverend Jackson's nationally syndicated radio show, Keep Hope Alive, he is also speaking for the oligarchy. And I think,
Yes.
see, one day he will not be a factor. He will not be here, but it's the thinking. It's the thinking that is still here. You don't, I mean, it's the thinking. Dr. King is still here. I mean, it's the thinking that's here. And in his case in particular, these are the people to whom he is actually literally indebted, and they wanted him to sell their proposition. I mean, look, the head of the Federal Reserve said, "No, I won't leave." Wait a minute. So who's running the country? The banks or the people of the United States? It's clear that the banks are.
Well, the
So,
Fed,
in these
the Fed,
last 3 minutes, yeah, help us to, I mean, because bottom line, we got a lot of work to do, Dr. Malvo.
well, we've got a lot of work to do, and we've got to do it. And we can't depend on government. We want government to be fair and reasonable, but we also have to figure out how we develop and protect our own institutions. One of the things I'm working on now is a whole proposal about developing Saturday schools, so that our people can come together. First of all, our young people, because they're beginning to take our history out of K through 12. So we want to
Mhm.
make sure that they're very vehicles where our young people can learn our history. History is power. When our young people understand what has happened to us, what has been done to us structurally, they're able and willing to fight. So that's
Mhm.
so Saturday school proposal, though it's beyond just going into schools, really churches on Saturday, but it's also having meetings for adults. This is like what Reverend does, with his Saturday mornings. But to do something like that all over the country, and I'm hoping it's going to take a little work, but I'm hoping we could figure out a way to have us all reading a uniform curriculum, so that we
Mhm.
can begin to have conversations that are not about who's zooming whom and how few clothes somebody had on, but more about substantive things. That's what we really need to do as a people. We need to gird our minds to be ready for this battle, because it is going to be a battle. So that's number one. The Saturday school program, as it is, it'll take me a while to finish writing this proposal, but I am going to write it, and I've been talking to people about it, and many of us are excited about, back in the 70s. That's what we used to do. We sit around, read Miles' Little Red Book, and read, American Negro poetry. Our conversations were more focused on ideas than junk. So we really need to do a bit more of that. But number two, if you work for the feds, please make sure you have adequate legal representation. You could be downsized, whatever they're calling themselves, any day. Make sure you have the representation and work with your union. Here's the other thing. You mentioned it earlier when you talked about um, how who is we? Our sense of community has been eroded. We've been, where everybody's doing their own thing. And, there are a lot of leaders out there and a lot of wannabe leaders out there. And many of us out there have to learn how to be followers as well as leaders, so that we can begin to develop, um, fight back. And our unions are important, especially people who belong to them. Pay your dues to your union. Um, but not only our unions, our NAACPs and urban leagues, and our newer organizations, these young people with the Black Lives Matter movement, very important. And they have a policy table. They do the movement for Black lives. So there's nothing wrong with submitting your will to that of an organization. There's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of us feel like, oh no, but I know as much as they do. I used to tell people all the time, you're a college president. A friend of mine said, being a college president with a brilliant faculty is like herding cats. And it truly is. Partially because everybody thinks they could do your job. They just don't want to do it. Oh, I could be the president. I just don't want to do all that work. Well, no, you
Uh-huh.
can't be the president because I am. What you have to figure out is how to work within the community. And I think that that's the case with lots of, I think ego is, what would I say? People are beginning to get their hands around ego and doing a little better with it. And we're going to have to do a lot better with it if we're going to resist this stuff. We can't act, the whole notion of envy, of how come they get to do this and I don't. Mm-mm. God got something for everybody.
Well, first of all, that's the wrong that's the wrong tack. I don't, because the thing is, I do not envy someone who's able to do wrong. That's not the point. And you were not put there to be like the like the forces that we had to overcome to get you in there? That's the wrong question. The question is, I mean, the baseline is how can we be good and how we can get better and how we can become the best. Not in
Absolutely.
some competitive way. I mean, to be spiritually mature, to fight to create a just, equal, fair, prosperous America. And it will only be those things when everybody gets an opportunity to live out their potential and to develop it, whatever that is. So, let's stay there. Dr. Julianne Malveaux, what on WPFW, Mondays, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I want to thank you. Heard you take a deep breath. What do you want to say before we go?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I think that folks just be vigilant, be mindful, and be active. And be active.
All right. Couldn't be better said. And support these small businesses
Yeah.
around these schools, these universities. They're supporting our students and they're supporting the whole community. There's more to the world than a big box store. Think about that.
And matter of fact, just stay out of a big box store.
Well, that's what Reverend Jamal Bryant said, and I'm following him. How about that part?
There
All
you go.
right.
Stay out the big box store. And except for supporting black business, a recession is coming. Stack your money.
Well, coming, it's already here.
And sisters, y'all who love those Tommy Cho's and those, they're made in China. If you paid $100 for a Tommy Cho, that's not 100, five or whatever, it's going to be double the price because of the
Oh,
tariffs.
but,
So
but
stack
let
your
me tell you really quickly what they're beginning to do is they're going on TikTok and they're in social media and they are showing you how you can buy directly from them.
mm.
So, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a whole new day.
But if you buy directly from them, you're still going to have to pay the tariff. So basically, what you're saving, let's say the shoe costs 1,000
Mhm.
now, it would cost 2,000, maybe a little less, but about 2,000 tariff imposed. If you got it at Macy's, you get it directly from them, maybe it'd be 1,500. You still paying more than a grand for a pair of shoes.
Well, I don't think that's right.
I don't. I understand. Unfortunately, since I'm relegated to the world of flats these days, I just wear tennis shoes. Uh, I
Well,
got
everybody isn't, but you know what? We're gonna make it through because the world's gonna get right,
it. Yeah, the
and
world's going to get much better. I
that's
can't
what.
say it, so I'm not going to do that. You can.
Well, it's gonna get right. It's gonna get right. I love you, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, President Emeritus, Bennett College for Women, brilliant economist, nationally syndicated radio. Of course, on WPFW.org. Tell everybody about it. Nationally syndicated uh, columnist. Read her and tell everybody about her. And you know what? And let these stations know you want to see her sometime, somewhere, everywhere. There we go.
That would be lovely.
Well, it's lovely what you're already doing. God has you where God wants you. How about that part?
I can live with that.
All right now.
Okay.
Love you so much. God
Take
bless
good
you.
care.
Everybody, have a great one. Love you, love you. Be well. God bless you in this holy week. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I'm Santita Jackson.